Hi, welcome to 5% Club podcast with me, Bryan Mansell, your host. I'm delighted today to be joined by another one of our elite estate agency companies and agents. So Rikki Cassar is with us. Rikki, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, very well. Thanks ever so much, Bryan. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you so much for giving up some time to share your views on the world of reservations and the property market and so on and so on. Do you want to sort of start us off just giving the viewers a bit of a background on, your business, where you are, where you're trading, all this sort of stuff?
Yeah. Estate agency based out in Marlow. We're more of a boutique style estate agency, so we're not taking on like hundreds of volume of properties, but trying to sell 99% of what we take on, which is being kind of strong on by the actual reservation agreement. It actually helps keep those percentages to that level of closer to the 100% mark.
Fantastic.
Previous experience in terms of why I want to work with using reservation agreements is having worked in the Middle East and used a slightly different process. I wanted to emulate the same or similar thing in the UK when starting this business. So I used to take 10% from deposit from the buyer and the seller. This isn't quite as strong as that, but it's as good as we're going to get in the UK at this point in time without being like the Wild West.
Yeah, I get it's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, we've got obviously a large number of agents working with Gazelle, but not very many of them have got the experience that you've got, which is quite unique. Because I think it's fair to say that England is probably one of the only countries in the world, probably, that doesn't actually have a process that's embedded. So your experience in the Middle East, I take it was just people quite happy to do deposits. It's a natural thing, I guess.
It's different. The transaction time isn't so long there anyway. It's usually not a long transaction would be 60 days or 30 days. But so there's not the normal reservation agreements, but generally speaking, you have a memorandum of understanding. There'd be a contract and penalties. It's not enforceable that you do deposits, but I used to enforce a deposit on both the seller and the buyer, and any resistance from that would obviously indicate some level of people that perhaps didn't have a straight line that they wanted to sort of go down and had other agendas. So it was a policy I kind of inbuilt there just by probably some experiences that allowed me to kind of think, well, I need to not do that again. So yeah, doing that for sort of 6-7 years, I didn't lose one deal in 6-7 years. So 10% deposit, no one wants to lose 10%. It's a strong
deterrent.
Deterrent, yeah, it's probably the best word for it. But at the same time, it really does sort out the men from the boys, or just the time wasters.
So I guess, but I guess with your experience coming and starting a business here in the UK, I guess I'm not going to speak for you because I know we've obviously chatted many times before about this, but I guess coming from that background, that experience where it's just what happens, and you can see that people are, not resistant to it. They're quite pleased to put down deposits to hold properties. How did you tackle getting that into a country where the people are not used to that here?
I think it comes down to when you're selling and when you're out seeing people, whether it's taking on a vendor or seeing a buyer. So when it comes down to sitting down with a vendor, I pretty much tell them and go through my process and your sale ready material is quite useful to use. And the fact it's actually backed up and been sort of rubber stamped by the government as well is quite nice. Not a lot of people know about it, not even solicitors, because they don't daily look for it or look at it. But when coming up against that, it's actually a breath of fresh air. If you just ask a few questions of either people's experience or if they know of anyone else that's had an experience of selling or buying a house, and do they understand the sort of potential pain points? Once people start kind of putting those on the table, most of the time people have actually had an experience they can kind of call upon, or someone else or one of their friends, that it will make sense. So when you then deliver, by the way, my process is this, because I am 100% process by using a reservation agreement. I don't sell a house without it.
How do you? What are the challenges that we hear on a daily basis from agents? And it's kind of the purpose of why you've very kind of given up your time to sort of help educate agents about Gazelle. Is that I don't think the buyer's going to want to do it, or what buyers will be very resistant. How have you tackled that particular part?
So typically, like you say, usually it's the cost. There's an element of cost behind every sort of level of resistance, whether it's the price of the house or what's going on within the process. Okay, so it's just again, it comes back down to a salesman doing their proper job of qualifying their buyers or qualifying their sellers. And if it comes back down to cost, well then surely they don't want to lose money when they're doing a process that could potentially fall to pieces at least 30-40% of the time. You want to lose money, so money is important to you. And by the way, wouldn't you just want to have that, how can I say, no anxiety from the point of making your offer? You can kind of sit back, relax, and hope the rest of the process does its thing. You set a reservation agreement for the time frame that works for both parties, and then they can be quite relaxed that they're not going to get gazumped, or the seller's not going to have someone pull the price down on them last minute for something what would be deemed as unreasonable.
Yeah.
Someone waking up in the morning and feeling they've had a bad dream and it's no longer a good idea. And this standard English process allows people to just walk away, which is wrong.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, and people take no responsibility. So when going out and doing those offers, what you'll find is the resistors aren't the ones that are really ready to offer anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're just coming out there, they're just chucking off offers willy-nilly. They haven't sold the house, they haven't done this, they haven't done that. It's that comes down to sort of qualifying that buyer's offer. But I sowed the seed from the point that, from the advertising through to when someone makes an inquiry. And then once they're in front of the property and actually like something, then, okay, this is how it's done, this is what you need to do. And by the way, here's all the reservation agreement information along with the buyer information pack, which, by the way, you'd have to wait 4 to 6 weeks to see that from your solicitors in a normal circumstance. Yeah. So they've got all the stuff up front ready to make their decision. And, if they actually, the seller walked away from it or went with a better buyer, at least they're getting some level of compensation out of it.
Yeah, over nothing. So you've done many agreements. What would you talking to the estate agents rather than me?
Yeah.
What would you advise? When have you found the best time to sort of bring the buyer into the picture about this?
So I've tried at various different points. From the point of the first inquiry, so people are already starting to kind of think about it. But I think that sometimes you might then confuse whether they're interested in the house or whether they're worried about going into an agreement. So I'd say allow someone to actually like the property first, put it on the advert, raise it over when they start asking the questions, if they want to start making offers, and just say, look, bear in mind, if you're going to make an offer, just take into consideration you've got a cost of X. Potentially for the reservation, what's that? That triggers the question. You then can have a sit-down chat about it. But the difference is some agents give a 10-minute show round. I tend to take a lot more time from the point of view of not having to do repeat viewings or second viewings, and also taking through the process if they're genuinely serious about making an offer, whether that's at the viewing or then arrange a meeting with them afterwards at a coffee shop or your office. So it really does depend on the interested party. I mean, ultimately, you don't want to be educating the world at a cost of your time, but at the same time, there's a right time to put it forward. And I think probably a bit too early on can kind of, especially with first-time buyers, they'll be having too much to think about already. So let's wait until they're actually really interested in the property and then tackle it thereafter. Yeah,
I totally agree. I think it's definitely worth introducing it at the point in which think someone is thinking of an offer. And I think we've heard from many people that have said, agents that have said that it's actually quite a good viewing close in a way. It's kind of a soft close. If you like the house,
yeah.
To let one of the things you need to know is the seller of the property is very keen to offer the buyer a reservation period so that no one can take the property from you. So if it's something you're keen to look at, definitely let's have if you want to offer it, let's have a chat about that before you make your offer, because
absolutely, yeah.
Also presenting your offer with a commitment behind it is likely, from the seller's perspective, for them to take you very seriously, which is also a major point.
Yeah, and it really does filter out.
Sorry, my friend, you carry on.
I say it really does filter out the serious buyers from non-serious, even if they're serious buyers, but not about that particular property. It will come to light very quickly. I've had people try to sort of, they know I've got an offer on the table that's not signed up. Oh, I'll put a higher offer in. Okay, let me tell you about our process. The offer didn't come. Guess what? They're probably lining up a load of offers in places where they maybe not going to conclude. So it really does stop. You will get the resistance, but I find it's only from people that don't actually want to make a commitment, which they'd end up walking off at some point anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. What about downsides? So, negative points, there must be some. What if any of you had or experienced, and how have you dealt with them?
I have had one person that ended up making an offer, agreeing the reservation agreement, going through to the point where we'd kind of not removed it quite from the market or anything like that, but they wanted a solicitor to look over a reservation agreement. They were super worried and a bit nervous about going into something they didn't know or understand. Now, maybe that's because they have a lot to do with contracts and fear the general contract in general. So it's more about the individual on that side of things. But that essentially stopped them going forward because they didn't want to sign on a reservation agreement. Fine, we'll find someone that does. It's that strong. And you know what? And that was because the solicitor turned around and said, well, you're then stuck into this agreement. And they didn't give it the light of day. That solicitor since then, I've now spoken to them on another agreement, another property, and actually they're quite on board with it now.
Yeah.
So it's just about understanding and educating in the market.
Yeah, we've seen this. I mean, I think the key message here, certainly the one that I give to agents when they talk about this, especially when they're talking to us for the first time, is, well, what happens if a solicitor says no? Well, you need to double check that's actually happened first. Because if a buyer says to you, oh, I would do it, but my solicitor said I shouldn't. Well, first of all, rather than the immediate assumption that that's actually happened, it's, okay, what specifically has your conveyancer said? Who did you speak to and what did they say? Because we need to make sure that we're very, very clear when we pass this information to the seller, because it could have an impact on whether they go with you as a buyer or not. When we've done that, we found that 90% of those questions, the buyer's never actually rung the solicitor about it. It's just an excuse. Because ultimately, the system that we've always had in this country for buying and selling has always massively favored those who are buying, because I got the house off the market, so I'm all right, and I can keep looking. So if I do find something else later on, if I get any remorse about this house, I'm going to see everybody. I can still keep my eyes open and see everybody else's. And that's okay. But what's not okay about that is you're asking the seller not to do that. So you can't have your cake and eat it. And if you're going to play the game of, pretending that the solicitor has said no, then when there's an agreement in place, you're going to get found out.
Yeah, absolutely. It has had the situation where the solicitor said, I'm not going to deal with this. I don't want to be on with a reservation agreement. In actual fact, the buyer's bought into it that much. They say, fine, okay, I'm moving solicitor because clearly you're not the right person for us. The funny thing is, when you turn around and tell them that you've got all the material information, we're, Gazelle Law Society approved, and the reservation agreement's been kind of rubber stamped under a case study by the government, then clearly that's not the right solicitor for you. You kind of point out a few things. I mean, it's a bit of a headache for them to have to then go and find a new solicitor. But again, I think that there's a lot of education needed out there in the marketplace for these type of agreements. Unfortunately, the reservation agreement shares a similar title to something similar to a new reservation on a new property, which they get a bit confused. They think they've got to do more work. And again, it comes back down to sort of educating your buyer to educate their solicitor, or have a conversation with them directly, if not your letter you provide or whatever it is. But as I say, I do it 100% of the time, so I have come up with the odd bit of resistance, but it's more acceptance and relief and breath of fresh air than the resistance side of things. Yes, there's a cost, and that can come into it, but again, depending on the offer, you can either split it up depending on how it's best fit the buyer and seller.
So final question for me really is this one, which is really advice you would give estate agents that are listening to this or watching this in respect to introducing this to sellers. So you've been doing this for quite a while now. How have you found that process? I mean, obviously you get some good success with it, but how much is the inclusion in your business of Thames and Country that, how prominent is the Gazelle offering, I suppose, is the question.
It's a benchmark. It is a cornerstone of what I do. And how I am actually able to go up against the bigger estate agents and offer something different. Because there's plenty of people that wanted to do that in the past, do a deposit, do some sort of process. The bigger estate agents don't have a process in place to offer it. And in actual fact, it gives us that unique selling point that most people aren't really doing. I know there's other people and other agents that have the ability to offer Gazelle reservation agreement that don't do it 100% of the time. And I know people that lost buyers, they got gazumped, or the buyers walked away and they were with an agent that perhaps could have done it, but didn't do it, or didn't even offer it. The point is you've got to offer it 100% of the time. And depending on how strongly you believe in it, I won't take a property on without it. Because I haven't got the cash flow stability that perhaps, I'm not going to use names, but let's say much bigger agents have got, where they can sit back on a heavy bank account. It's very important to me that 97% of my deals go through rather than 50%. Yeah. So that's why I do it. It's much more stable for my business as a smaller business that's growing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
You know, you're working smart, not hard.
Yeah, I mean,
In 2 years, Brian, I've done over 20 odd, 26 odd deals, one of which has gone back to market after someone pulling out and exchange. One out of 26 deals. The rest of them are completed. So just to give you some sort of numbers on that.
It's pretty good, mate. It's pretty good. So anything you'd like to add to this? Any message you'd like to give to anybody watching?
Just don't be afraid to kind of ask the question. I think the half the battle is people changing habits. And I've come up against it when I've sort of introduced it to another agent and asked them to put it onto their vendor when I've got it with my buyer. And I'm trying to help that then buyer make an offer and say, look, by the way, they can have a reservation agreement. This person's ready to commit to you. It was an immediate kind of knee-jerk reaction, no. Or they put it to the owner as, oh, they've got this weird agreement. Because they haven't took the time to understand it. And it's change of process. People don't like change. And I think it's just a case of being open-minded. If you want to sell more houses and have less fall-throughs, if you want more fall-throughs, carry on doing it without.
Yeah, I think the great irony that I see on a daily basis, and I've seen for many years in our industry, is if any seller rang an estate agent and said, are you open to change? Are you innovative? Are you always looking at what's going on for best practice so you can help me move? They say, oh, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Complete rubbish most of the time. They just don't want to do it. It sounds like it's hard work. And and then they get to, I've had a situation today, an agency on the phone, been with Gazelle for 2 years, not done one agreement. One of the directors doesn't like it, apparently, now I found out. And their fall through rate has remained where it did at just under 30%. So the owners now say, right, enough's enough. We've got to do this. We've had Gazelle for a year. We've not done it once. Our fall through rate is 28%. And if we had, looking back when we started with Gazelle, if we had this done properly with our business, would have made us an extra 130 grand.
It's a no-brainer. I don't understand why anyone doesn't do it.
What?
It's crazy.
It's just crazy.
I mean, look at it this way. What does it cost the estate agent?
Absolutely nothing. Yeah.
Zero, right? So from perspective of what it costs to what you get out of it, it's an absolute no-brainer. And I think it's ultimately point of change and also training. People don't have time to invest the training into the staff. But at the same time, it's, they've got to kind of take a bit of ownership about it. But if you put it in as a policy, this is how we do it, move it forward. You wouldn't do a sale without doing an AML check.
No.
You wouldn't do a sale without taking proof of the deposit or the agreement in principle. Treat it exactly the same as that.
Yeah, or at least checking the chain, right? I mean,
it is check the chain or whatever it might be, but it has to be part of the process. If we're not going to have it imposed by the government, you've got to impose it yourself if you want less fall-throughs. Personally speaking, I don't want any fall-throughs. So I'm going to say you can't give it 100% because there's always going to be the odd anomaly that happens. But ultimately, I think it's, for me, the only way I can move forward. I mean, obviously, we've discussed different values and compensation levels. I would obviously lean towards getting the highest compensation level in any one agreement that you can not get away with it, but you could kind of encourage, because that then discourages the gazumping and it discourages people to pull out. If they were worried about losing 20 grand, why?
Yeah.
Are you actually going to, is there an agenda? It really does flush things out.
Yeah.
So
brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today. And it was really, really great seeing you.
Likewise, welcome. Thanks ever so much for your time. Cheers to the